So welcome to this episode of the Ninth Grade Experience podcast. This is a bonus episode. It wasn't one that we originally intended to record here, but over the holiday break, I have access to two people in my family that are ninth graders from outside of our district. So I thought it would be fun to get them in here on a Zoom and talk to them. We normally would have done this in person over the holidays, but with everything going on, everyone's kind of stayed in their respective spaces here. So I want to thank my nieces, Maddy and Catalina, for joining us here today. You can say hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
So I figured, I had this idea last year to get them on to this podcast. And this year they're both in ninth grade in their high schools at different parts of the country. So I thought it would be kind of fun to take a couple minutes here, catch up with them and see how their ninth grade years are going and maybe compare it to some of the things that are going on in our own high school here as well. So they both have pretty different experiences based on where they're currently located. So I'm going to let whoever wants to go first, if you just want to introduce yourself, tell us your name of your high school, where it is located, and about how many kids you have, and then I will compare it to how many we have here at Emmaus High School. So who wants to go first?
I'll go. Okay, so hello, I'm Maddy, and my high school, Watchung Hills Regional High School, is located in New Jersey. So
it's about more central New Jersey, correct?
Yeah.
If we're kind of, So not quite New York City, like close to New York City, but not quite close to Philadelphia. So kind of right smack dab in the middle. And we looked it up before we started. She has about a little less than 2,100 students in her high school. So a little bit smaller than Emmaus. So she'll be able to give us some interesting takes from New Jersey. And then Catalina, how about you? Can you just tell us a little bit about your high school?
So I go to Lane Tech. There's about 4,000 people there, and we're in Chicago. There's not much else.
So I believe, if I remember, we were just we visited you it was 2 summers ago now, and we were talking about high school as well. And I believe that the high school that you are attending is the largest in Chicago. Is that correct? Do you know that off the top of your head?
That's a possibility.
So 4,000 people is about, it would be the largest high school in the Lehigh Valley by far. I think it's larger than Parkland and Allen as well too. So they have about 4,000 kids there. So Catalina, I'm going to ask you first, because since we talked a little bit before we started recording. So how many days so far this school year have you actually been inside of your high school?
None.
So you've been remote the entire year. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what that process has been like for you? The students here at Emmaus High School have been remote for all but 2.5 weeks of school. So kind of similar to you, we've been remote. We were started in remote, and we were remote until the end of October. We were back for a couple weeks. And then, by the middle of December, we were remote for the entire time. So what has it been like adjusting to a new high school that you have not stepped foot in since you did a tour of it last year when you were an 8th grader?
It's very awkward most of the time, because in most of my classes I don't know anybody, and nobody turns their camera on, so nobody knows what anybody looks like. And then all the teachers are really nice, which helps. And then I have met a couple people through classes, and there are some after school activities that you can join, which are over Zoom. Which it does help with those kind of things to get to know people.
And we'll talk a little bit as we kind of go into this about what some of the stuff that you both have kind of gotten yourself involved with. So I'll ask this one to you, Catalina, and Maddy, you can chime in on this one too. So the rule in our school is, in theory, they're supposed to have their camera on for the entire time during instruction. So I'm hearing from Catalina that not a lot of people have their cameras on. Is that pretty common in your online classes, that there are not a lot of cameras on?
Actually, everyone has to keep their camera on, or else they'll be marked absent.
Oh, so that's kind of the rule. The rule that we have here at Emmaus is kind of the cameras on, or you could be marked absent. So I'm assuming, Catalina, that is not the rule at your school.
Well, they want you to have your camera on, but most of the time, because there's a lot of people in the class, they want you to have your camera. They want some people to have the camera on, because otherwise it goes really slow.
Now, how long, and this can be for both of you too. So when you have class Oh, actually, Maddie, let me ask you first. So Maddie, you've actually been in your building. You were hybrid for basically almost the whole time up until I think the middle of December-ish time. Is that
Mhm.
right? That you've been hybrid the entire time?
Yeah.
And you've been actually going to the building, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So what has your kind of experience been like? How many days were you going into the building, and what was your transition like kind of coming from eighth grade to the high school with the kind of limited time in the building as well?
Yeah, well, I would go in either 3 or 2 days a week because I was in cohort B. So like cohort A would go in like Monday and Tuesday, and then like we'd switch off Wednesdays, and then we would go in Thursday and Friday. So like, and then you could also have a choice to like either stay remote or go in. So it's like weird though because like you can't, it's like hard to meet people. Even though you go in, you can't socialize because you have your mask on, and like it's just learning, like you don't do anything, like you can't talk to people and there's no lunch. So it is like hard. And then like I've stopped really going into the building because I just like think there's no point because you have to get up early and there's just like I can't wake up. So I just like stay online now because it's easier.
And how long into going hybrid did you kind of make that choice that you were not really enjoying the experience in the building? Do you remember like approximately like when in the school year you decided to not go into the building?
Yeah, I think it was like the end of November going into December. So like the beginning of December.
So you made it pretty far though. You made it,
Mhm.
you know, almost through the first like 3 months of school with doing the
Yeah.
hybrid. And then you kind of figured out, which I think a lot of our students are figuring out the same thing is like, okay, if I have to wake up at 6 a.m. to get on the bus, to go to school, to sit in a study hall for 45 minutes, that I could have just been home sleeping. It's kind of like defeats the purpose of kind of going. And you said that you didn't have lunch at your school. So what was like your daily schedule like when you were in the hybrid? Where you just kind of, if you didn't have a lunch, I'm assuming that you were kind of in pretty early and then out pretty early based on that.
Yeah, so we would go in at about 7:30. Like our first class would start at 7:30, and then we'd have only 4 classes during the day. So we'd have like first period and then second period, and then we have like a 15-minute snack where like you could go into like the gym and like you could like I guess talk to people, but like you couldn't take your mask off, so like there was no point. And then we had another 2 classes. So the day went from like 7:30 to like 12:15.
And then you would just go home. That's kind of how our schedule is too. Ours is from 7:15 to 1:15 or seven, yeah, in that range, like 7:23 to 1:15. And the kids have lunch built in. So they have this like time in the one block where they kind of can eat lunch and kind of when they were in the building, they ate physically there. But then at home, they kind of had to relog back on for the fourth period as well. So you said it was kind of awkward, like kind of talking and meeting new people. And you know, Catalina, you said you were kind of meeting some people through Zoom and through some other stuff. Like when you were at the end of last school year, when we shut down, were they kind of preparing you for like that transition from eighth to ninth grade? And what were kind of your expectations coming from eighth grade into ninth grade, you know, kind of not really knowing what kind of environment you would be in, but what was that kind of transition period like last year? And then kind of compare it to what it's been like this year. Was it like anything that you imagined, or was it just kind of nothing like that?
Well, in 8th grade, I was in a different school, so we ended up going. Uh, we ended up going virtual at the end of the year, and it was on Zoom. And then starting 9th grade, it was really confusing because they were just sending you emails of like information about Google Classroom because it was a different thing, so it was a lot harder to use.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like gauging how new everything was.
And like, and your setup in Chicago is a little bit different than Maddie's. You know, I'm not going to kind of take it away from Maddie here, but I think like in our school district, like you go to like one of two middle schools and then you wind up at the big high school. Whereas for you, Catalina, it was more of a process of like figuring out which high school you were actually going to go to. I think you had to like apply to different schools and figure that out. Like that's how Chicago is, you know, a little bit different than where we currently are. But you really didn't have a way of like, until I forget exactly when you found out like which high school you were going to go to, but it wasn't like you had a whole build up of like the entire spring, like knowing which high school you were going to go to, correct?
Yeah, I had to take a couple different tests, and then my score, like, I think two of them together, my score of them, decided which high school. Well, I had to apply to one, and that decided which high school I got into, and then I could say yes or no to whatever one I got into.
Yeah. So your process is a lot different than I think. I'm assuming Maddie's process was more like you were at the middle school. I think we were talking there are four regional middle schools and they all dump into the big high school there. So is that kind of your experience there, Maddie?
Yeah, like there's 4 towns, like I'm one of 4 towns, and then all of us go to the same high school. Like we merge into the high school.
And was there any sort of prep? I know you also went virtual. I think maybe a little bit later than we did. I think you stayed open maybe a little bit longer than we did in Pennsylvania. But was there anything that before they did, or even after they went virtual, that helped to prepare you for your ninth grade year and kind of talking to you about like the difference in changes or the expectations at all?
Yeah, we had an orientation that was like that happens every year. Like the 8th graders go with like a sibling. If you have a sibling in the high school or like a friend, you go with them and you follow them around their day and all that. But a lot of it got canceled. Like I was gonna go with my sister because she was gonna be a senior, and it got canceled because so many people were like, I guess so many people were going, and it was like COVID, so they had to cancel it.
So
So I
yeah,
didn't end up going.
yeah, so really not neither of you kind of had a way to prepare or kind of gauge what it was going to be like. So, we're now at the little past the Christmas break here. We're actually talking on New Year's Day here. I can't tell if everyone's frozen. Oh, they're moving. I was going to say it looked like everyone was frozen, but they're all sitting so still. They're all so used to, looking like they're there on the Zoom, but not really maybe being there, but they're all there. So we're now a little past the almost close to the midpoint. And what has been like the one thing that's been the most surprising for you as being a ninth grader, especially in the environment that you're currently in? Was it like, has it for Catalina, you haven't been in the building. Like, what has your experience been like of transitioning to high school? Has it been harder than you thought academically? Has it been easier because you've been at home? What has that been like? And then Maddie, I'll kind of ask you a slightly different version of the same question. So Catalina, what has it been like for you? Like your biggest surprise, or what has been the hardest part of your transition to ninth grade so far this year?
Well, I thought it'd be a lot harder, but the teachers, like, they made the curriculum a lot easier because we're online, and I think it's made it a lot easier to cope with everything that's going on. And like, I have A's in all my classes right now, and although I don't there's like out of 100 that you get, and everything you do in the class gets graded, and it goes into your grade. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So basically you're just accumulating lots of different assignments and points. And then are you taking like tests and quizzes, or is it just all based on work assignments?
Yeah, we have like a test in each class like almost every week, I think. Yeah.
And do you get like live instruction? So is it like you have to be like our students here at Emmaus High School, they have to be logged on at 7:23 and they basically go from class to class to class, and it's like live instruction all day. Is that what your schedule is like as well?
Yeah, I start at 8 o'clock, and then I have like 40-minute classes, but they end, and then they have like a 15-minute break between classes, and I have lunch my 4th period. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then for Maddie, your question is a little bit different. So it sounds like Catalina was pretty easily able to adjust to kind of like the rigors of high school and kind of looking at that. So Maddie, how is your ninth grade? Like, what has been the biggest part of your transition, or the thing that was kind of the most challenging for you? I know going back and forth with like hybrid and getting stuff done. And I forget, I should know the answer to this, but I don't. I know you were a cheerleader in the past. I don't know if you cheered in the fall at all, or if you were doing any other sort of activities or anything in the fall that were allowed in your area. But what has been the biggest transition or the hardest thing that you've kind of had to overcome here at the beginning of your ninth grade year?
Well, probably just getting used to, since it was my first year, I didn't know the high school. So like the hardest thing was probably just getting used to like being there and like getting to know the teachers and like getting to know how much work we get, like as in like classwork and like homework.
Mm-hmm.
And just like adjusting to the difference and like adjusting to the new kids because I didn't like know anybody. So that was like pretty hard for me.
So here's a question for you. So what was one piece of advice that Mia tried to give you that was not really helpful?
That wasn't helpful.
That was not helpful, that she tried to like maybe uh, lead you in the wrong way? Or was all her information just really helpful? I'm just trying to see if
Well,
she was.
she said, I think she used to say to me, like, to get on the teacher's good side, but like, I don't know, like, how. Like, that's, like, I didn't understand what she was trying to say, but she was like, get on the teacher's good side.
And have you figured that out at all in your beginning here of ninth grade? Like, does it make a little bit more sense what she means, or is it still like, I have no idea what you're talking about?
Well, I'm never really on the teacher's bad side, but like, I don't really like participate that much, so I don't know. I could probably do that.
And when you've been in school, did you prefer the online version, or did you prefer like the hybrid going in? Like, I know you said earlier that it wasn't really like school, but like, which of the two versions have you preferred so far this year?
Um, Definitely hybrid, even though I don't really go in anymore because I still want to be able to like have the choice to go in or like
Mhm.
stay home. Like some days I might want to like get like ready and like go in, and then other days I might just want to like stay in my bed and do school from there. So like I like having the choice.
Gotcha. So either one of you, this can kind of go for either one of you. Like, have you been involved in any sort of school activities or clubs or organizations in the fall, just kind of getting yourselves involved? When we talk to our students here at the high school, one of the things we always kind of find from our ninth grade students is like, the more they're involved early, the easier the transition is, and they kind of get to know people and get involved. So has there been stuff that you have been involved with in the fall? And I know Catalina, I think for you, volleyball might be in the spring. I don't know. Hopefully they'll have that. But like, have you found yourself involved in anything at the school that has allowed you to kind of get a little bit more comfortable?
I haven't signed up for any of the clubs yet, but I've done club volleyball, and I met one girl who goes to Lane there, who's in my history class, which is pretty cool. And I did it in the summer, and then it started to transition to like personal trainings because the season was canceled. And then I think school volleyball tryouts are in February because I think they're moved there. Yeah.
So you will at this point, maybe in theory, have a volleyball season, which is kind of cool too. At least you have that going. So is there any sort of club or activity that you are eyeing up that maybe you would think about joining, or just kind of getting a read on what you might be in, like kind of what's available to you and maybe something that caught your eye there?
Maybe like the ski club because I think that's pretty cool.
Okay. All right. So Maddie, how about you? What were you involved with at the beginning of the school year here?
I did cheer, like fall cheer.
Okay.
But it went from like it started, and it's supposed to usually start in August on like a normal year, but because of COVID, we started in September. So, and then it lasted until the end of November. So it was a really short season, which like I didn't like, even though it was my first year. So that was like difficult.
So that was kind of something that you had to learn in addition to learning the school and learning the new schedule, balancing your time. Now you were really involved in cheer outside of school previously too. So that did eat up a lot of your time. So you already had that kind of time budgeting thing that you needed to work on. But did you learn, or kind of what did the experience of cheering in the fall, did it help or hurt at all with kind of the transition to ninth grade?
No, it definitely helped because also like I met people and we could like talk because like we were learning together. So it definitely helped.
Okay. So I told them that we would only stay for about 15 minutes or so. I think we're coming up on almost 20 already. So this was not as stressful as I'm hoping you're not as stressed out as you said you were going to be. It's pretty easy. We're just having an easy conversation here. So we'll end on this note. So we always ask students at the end, well, not necessarily always specifically, but to give like any sort of tips or strategies to either current ninth graders or to eighth graders that will be ninth graders next year. So we're about halfway through the year, and maybe we'll have to get you back on to have like a final podcast here, like in June when everyone's done, to see how the rest of your year went. But what would you at this point, any recommendations or tips or strategies for students that are all in a remote setting, which Catalina is and our students are for the next couple of weeks, or when we go back to hybrid, which we're hoping it might be at some point in January that Maddy would give. So any tips or strategies that you would give to ninth grade students?
I would probably just say like not to stress about it. Like don't like get yourself all worried up about it because like everyone's in the same situation. So everybody's going through the same thing. So I would just like say to just like go with the flow.
Okay. And how about you, Catalina? Any strategies or tips that you've kind of developed in dealing with remote school and maybe, anything with that?
I'd say talk to people who are doing the same thing because it makes you feel more normal and because they're going through the same thing and you can both relate. So it's something to talk about.
And it's funny, like, I said to them before, and I think I said at the beginning, like, we just wanted to draw a comparison between like what high school students, ninth grade students are experiencing here in our own district versus like outside. And it sounds like the stories are pretty similar. We're dealing with online classes. We're dealing with the hybrid back and forth. We have wanting to figure out if we should get involved with things, being involved with things. So it sounds like your stories are very similar to the stories that we're experiencing here in our own district as well. So thanks for taking the time out to talk to us. I did say at the beginning that before we started recording, I said to them, imagine that you're talking to your Nana and kind of explaining their ninth grade year to Nana, who I don't know how she'll listen to this podcast, but we'll get it to her somehow. So if you want to leave with one message for Nana about your ninth grade year, that's how we'll end this. So one message about your ninth grade year that's specifically to your Nana and Pop-Pop, what would you say to them?
I have no idea.
There's stunned silence. I didn't tell them this was going to be the final question.
Like advice?
No, just kind of if they were, at Christmas time, we would have all been together. They would have asked you, so how's ninth grade going? And you probably would have all said fine. But now we have a 15 to 20 minute conversation to have a little bit more detail. So if you could leave them with one final thought about your ninth grade year that you would like them to hear.
I would just say it's been interesting. It's been an interesting first half of the year.
Yeah, not what you expect for your first year of high school.
So that, I like that answer at the end. So it's not what they expected. And I guess it would be really hard to explain it to them, but maybe in the second half of the year, we'll have a officially inviting them back on at the end of the school year so we can hear how it goes. So is there anything you is there anything people should be looking for you online, or if you're TikTok famous or Instagram famous, anywhere that we want to draw the hundreds and hundreds of people that listen to this, they can go check you out?
I mean, they can follow me on Instagram.
So hopefully she puts a little plug on there for us on Instagram, and the thousands of followers at Watchung Hills Regional High School will listen to this and be like, man, I want to be on a podcast too. So who knows? And then Catalina is just staying silent there. So she just likes to hide. She likes to hide and climb rocks. That's all she wants to do. All right, everyone. So thanks for joining us. We'll let you get back to your winter breaks here and enjoy your new year, everybody. So thanks so much for joining us.
Bye.